Now, the world of work is changing rapidly with technology and the fourth industrial revolution literally altering the way that we do work. With that, new skills are required and the nature of our work brings new demands. So how can you future-proof your career? Well, our guest shares with us some essential skills that we should be developing for the future of work. Ari Katz is the CEO of Boston City Campus. Ari, thanks so much for joining us. Welcome. Always good to have you on the program.
Thanks for inviting me again.
All right, so 4IR, technology. I mean, I keep going back to the first industrial revolution. We kind of had automation happen and manufacturing things happen, and we all got worried. We thought jobs are going to disappear, and so 4IR is doing the same. But the question is, what do we need to bring on board to be skilled for this new future of work that's upon us?
So I think we should just roll back a little bit to, as you're saying, let's start with the third industrial revolution, which is commonly known as digitization. And from there we move to the fourth industrial revolution, which is the combination of digital skills together with physical, biological, Internet of Things, AI, etc. And of course that has, I don't want to say cause jobs to be lost, I'd rather say cause jobs to be replaced or realigned. And that's really it. I mean, if you think about it, as you mentioned, in the first and second industrial revolution, they all thought that there were going to be no more jobs. Yet the world as it stands today, in the developed world, is experiencing the lowest level of unemployment in the history of mankind.
With many more people actually in the world.
Correct. And of course digitization and 4IR leads has a lot of positives to it, in the sense that cost of production should go down, volumes should go up. So theoretically it should improve the quality of life. The challenge for us in South Africa is that do we have the skills to adapt to these new challenges? And that's really it. And the problem for us in South Africa is that we are net importers of technology and IT skills and IT software and equipment. So how do we become exporters of that? That's really what it's about. How do we create the skills within our schools, our universities, our industries to actually achieve that? That's really the challenge.
All right. So, I mean, you know, when you're talking, I'm hearing hard skills, actually kind of how to do this with this kind of machine in a new work environment. But I guess there's also soft skills that kind of need to be sharpened because computers can't do those.
Absolutely. And I think the interesting thing about what you're saying is that if you look at the World Economic Forum has listed the top 10 skills, so to speak, needed for the fourth industrial revolution. And interestingly, on that list, none of them was what you would call hard skills. I mean, top of that list is things like critical thinking, creativity, complex problem solving, and a whole range of soft skills. The problem for us in South Africa is that I think that historically our education system hasn't been framed towards things like critical thinking and complex problem solving. We've lived in a world of almost, I call it regurgitation, where you go to school, you learn a couple of things, you repeat it in the exam. It's not about challenging the system and the synthesis of soft skills with hard skills, because that's going to be the future challenge.
How do you teach soft skills though?
So we're of the belief that soft skills are not, contrary to what many people believe, is as part of the genetic pool. It's not part of the genetic pool. One can learn soft skills. There's no question about it. So let's take probably the one that's probably the most difficult, critical thinking or creativity or complex problem solving. Well, we present you with a problem, or we present you with a case, and we ask you to critically evaluate it, and there's not necessarily one right answer to that. And in fact, the answer you give needs to be challenged by another co-worker, another student, another learner, whatever it is. And that teaches critical thinking. But in addition to that, things like time management, meeting skills, collaboration. One of the important things that's going to be important in the future is understanding cultural communication. So, for example, if you're living in South Africa and you're exporting product or technology to other parts of the globe, it's important to actually understand cultural differences.
All right. So a couple of the ones on this list that kind of spoke to me quite a bit is practice empathy and embrace vulnerability. I mean, these are things that, you know, from the old school, you almost had to go to work hard, just do as you're told. What do you mean practice empathy and be vulnerable.
So I think first of all, if you want to get the best out of people, you need to have empathy, number one. Number two, in terms of when we talk about vulnerable, it's not only necessarily in terms of the meaning that you would think straight away, well, I'm vulnerable, I'm going to be damaged. Yeah. On the contrary, I think it's about adaptation. It's about embracing lifelong learning. It's embracing change. It's embracing new technologies. And that's really what it's about. We need to create a culture of lifelong learning and embracing change and embracing the change and thinking, how does this impact my job and how am I going to adapt to it? So adaptability is a key factor there.
And moving past fear and reframing the concept of pain, what's that about?
Well, so past fear is, as we were saying, embracing change. Yeah. Pain really is about, I think, what the common thinking around that is that, as they say, no gain, no pain. That as I move through, I struggle through it. And if you think about if I take it to academic terms, if you think about struggling through a mathematics problem, you'll always know so much better if you yourself struggled through that problem as opposed to somebody showing you the solution. And so if one thinks of it in that context, then one understands that to gain and to move forward, it's important to actually embrace the change and fight through it.
I suppose in the end what it's saying is that machinery, technology is going to take away a lot of tasks to free us to be able to do things that they can't do.
Correct, and I think also for us to innovate more, remember, nothing replaces personal skills. Nothing replaces the human touch.
All right. Well, thanks so much for coming into the studio humanly, giving us that human touch and giving us some food for thought, because I think we do need to start sharpening the saw with some of these things that we've perhaps neglected in the past. Ari, always a pleasure talking to you. Thanks so much indeed for your time.
Thanks.